I fell in love with AI because I'm like, oh my gosh, for once, something that thinks as fast as I do, and I can actually do all these things, and I can get stuff done, and this is so cool. If I had to say one thing, I still believe, and I will for a long time, that learning how to communicate with AI is incredibly important. A lot of people out there going, it doesn't matter anymore. AI is really smart. It can understand what you wanted, and that's true. But the difference between a good response and an incredible response is knowing how to communicate with it. Start to learn how to leverage AI in your job so that you can deliver more value. I truly believe that AI is for that purpose. It helps us deliver more value, whether that be to our audience, our clients, our employer, our family, wherever it is. I believe it does that for us. And I said, I'm not saying that people won't be displaced. I absolutely believe that AI has and will continue to displace some people, but the opportunities are going to be 10 times more. And I believe the people that are going to be replaced are going to be the people that don't implement AI. I don't believe that very many of us are going to get replaced by AI. If we get replaced, we're going to get replaced by somebody with our skill and talent that's leveraging AI to do more. Jonathan, hadn't changed who I was, and I needed to walk through a valley to change who I was. And that valley for me happened to be 3 years in prison, or as I like to say, my federally mandated sabbatical. While I'm in prison, my wife, by the way, was 5 months pregnant when she dropped me off. I had to give thanks while I'm 10 hours away and can't see my wife. I can't see my new baby. That was hard. But when I thought about it and thought, hang on, if I twist that, and my life sucks right now because I'm in prison, but my wife hasn't left me. I've got a healthy baby boy. Things are going just okay. I've got plenty of food to eat. I've got a roof over my head. My wife's got a great job, so she's okay, and the baby's okay. I have a lot to be thankful for, even though my personal situation absolutely just stinks right now. My real goal, I'm 56, turning 57 next month. My goal is I want to reach, and it's an arbitrary goal, but I want to reach 10 million people that currently think AI is not something that's a great thing, or they're scared about it, and teach them how it really is going to be an amazing tool if they simply make that choice to embrace it and to use it in a way that amplifies their skill and experience.
So what would you say to the person who's like, I'm too old. I'm not going to get into this AI game. What's the point? I'm getting ready to retire. Welcome, everyone, to today's episode of the Leverage and Lead podcast. I'm Bridget Bartlett, here with my co-host, Marla Harmon.
Hi, everyone.
Today, we have a special guest who is infamous in the high-level community, Jonathan Mast, who's the founder of Whitebeard Strategies, empowers businesses and entrepreneurs to harness AI for real growth. He's a trusted guide, making AI practical and approachable. His mission, help teams save time, increase profits, and deliver more value. Jonathan shows how AI amplifies human skill and creativity rather than replacing it, which I absolutely love because I'm always preaching the same thing. So
Awesome.
welcome.
Love that.
Welcome to the podcast.
Well, thank you. I'm excited to be here.
So, Jonathan, can you tell people a little bit about your experience, how you discovered High Level, who you serve?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So we started using High Level back in 2021, I believe it was. Actually, it was before I was doing anything with AI, and I had an agency with my wife. And we came across High Level and were like blown away about, wow, I can't believe all the stuff that we can do here for $97 a month. And that quickly changed into, oh, wow, as an agency, we can actually provide this to our clients and we can turn it into a revenue center. And so we very quickly moved into the white label reseller space there and began offering it as a bundled part of the services that we were doing. And yeah, it's been great. And then when I stepped out of the agency world in 2023, I moved, or I got a new High Level account, but I stuck with it and started the new business in it. And it runs, the vast majority of my business today as well. So yeah, we absolutely love it.
So you stepped away from the agency in 2023. Why?
I did. Well, I discovered AI, and I'm the quintessential ADHD entrepreneur, and I fell in love with AI because I'm like, oh my gosh, for once, something that thinks as fast as I do, and I can actually do all these things, and I can get stuff done, and this is so cool. And my team didn't necessarily agree with me on that. While they thought it was really cool, they were scared. And most of them, and keep in mind, this was, early 2023. And most of them were in the, what if all the rumors are true and it's going to take all our jobs? And I'm like, they're not true, guys. It's just, I don't believe it. I've studied history. It's never happened before when we've had major technological shifts. It's never, and there was like, but this time's different. And I'm like, you know what? They said that when the printing press came out, and they said that when the internet came out, and when the PC came out, and the internal combustion engine. And I'm going way out of order. Welcome to my ADHD world. But every time there's been a major tech thing, there's always been a crowd that said, but this time is different. And I said, I'm not saying that people won't be displaced. I absolutely believe that AI has and will continue to displace some people. But the opportunities are going to be 10 times more. And I believe the people that are going to be replaced are going to be the people that don't implement AI. Neither of you are old enough to remember, but when I started in the workforce, people still were just getting PCs on their desktop. There were still typewriters around and adding machines. And there were plenty of people at that point, and they're like, I'm not going to use one of those PCs. And for a couple of years, that was okay. But today, now 30 some years later, can you walk into an office anywhere and find dozens of typewriters in offices? No. Maybe there's one in the closet for that stray government form that still requires it, but that's generally about it. And I really think AI is going to happen faster than that, but I think it's the same thing. Unless you refuse to use AI, I don't think you're going to be replaced, or you're going to find AI is going to replace you. In fact, I think for employees, it allows team members to be more valuable because they can now add more value to the organization and add more value to the clients. Especially when you have skills. You know, I think that skilled employee is even more valuable than what they were beforehand.
So what would you say to the person who has a job right now and
Mm-hmm.
they are like, I'm getting ready to be replaced. I'm just feeling it. I'm seeing it coming. What should that person do?
Start to learn how to leverage AI in your job so that you can deliver more value. I truly believe that AI is for that purpose. It helps us deliver more value, whether that be to our audience, our clients, our employer, our family, wherever it is. I believe it does that for us. And if you are worried about your job, it's no different than any other type of continuing education, shall we say, where you need to go and you need to learn how to do new things. We've got something new. When, you know, if you were, I'll just pick and say you're 40 years old when they started putting PCs on the desk, you're a long ways away from retirement, but you're also a ways into your career. You're like, I don't know if I want to make this shift. But if you didn't make that shift, can you imagine 10 years later? So I got in the workforce around 1990. By the year 2000, can you imagine refusing to use a PC and going, but I can't get work and I refuse to use a PC? I actually know somebody like that, and they clean houses today. There's nothing wrong with that, but they refuse to go the PC route. They're my age. That's how I happen to know them, and they still have refused to do the PC thing. That's okay, but they also don't complain they got replaced by a PC. They didn't. They just chose not to embrace the technology and decided that's not where they wanted to be. And for them, that's okay. But I still don't. I don't believe that very many of us are going to get replaced by AI. If we get replaced, we're going to get replaced by somebody with our skill and talent that's leveraging AI to do more.
You know, people crack up when I tell them I was 30 years old before I had my first computer. I mean, we played Oregon Trail when I was in elementary school, and
Mm-hmm.
you'd put the floppy disk and all that
Oh
stuff.
yeah,
But computers just weren't like when I was growing up. They just like most people didn't really have them. I mean, the more to do people, they were well off people. They had computers, but it wasn't like it's not like now where we
sure.
have phones that are computers.
Oh my goodness,
So
more power than the first computers I had by a long shot.
yes, yes. So what would you say to the person who's like, I'm too old. I'm not going to get into this AI game. What's the point? I'm getting ready to
Mm.
retire. What would be the
You know,
point?
it's a personal decision, but I can tell you in the AI training and coaching that I do, nearly a third of my audience is over 65. And the reason that they're telling me they're so excited about it is because of the fact that they're able to take those years of experience that they have and amplify it by using AI, because AI is just a tool and it really is an amplification tool. If you know something well, it can help you do that better. If you don't know it well, it may help you do it acceptably. But there's very little risk to someone, since we're talking high level community, if you're an agency owner that's been in the marketing space for the last 15 years, there's very little risk that somebody that doesn't have 10 or more years of marketing experience, even using AI, is going to be able to surpass you without AI. So imagine if you start using AI, it's going to make you that much better. And it's one of the reasons I get excited as we start seeing AI integrated into these areas and the things that AI can do that save us time. It's a lot of the heavy lifting stuff that doesn't require a lot of thought, believe it or not. AI is really good at repeatable tasks. It's really good when you can define what needs to happen. It's not so good when you say, well, make a decision on what to do here without any context, because it doesn't know where to find that context. It doesn't know what to do. Humans, on the other hand, we can say, I have a decision to make, and we'll then discern what type of context is needed so we can make a decision. AI still struggles with that. It may not 10 years from now, but at the moment, it's not very good at doing that. If it's trained, it's amazing. If it's not trained, it just sits there and blinks at me all day long and doesn't do much.
And there are times where AI will give you the wrong information,
Oh,
uh,
yeah.
your experience that, to your point, the 65-year-old, that they bring to the table, that experience is what is allowing you to go and rein in when the AI doesn't, that, gives you the incorrect information. So, to your point, I love to hear that there are older people that are embracing it.
Yeah, and we found a lot. And again, like you said, I ran last night. I spent about 2 hours working with three different AI agents, feeling like a 3-year-old in a candy store, having lots of fun, brainstorming ideas and coming up with stuff. And this morning, I had to go over it with my marketing director, and I had a PDF that the AI created summarizing our conversations. And even as I went through that PDF, I'm like, okay, 80% of this is gold, but 10% of this is absolute garbage, and 10% I can't really decide on. But you need to have, like you said, Marla, you need to have that convenient, or that expertise to be able to go and say, yeah, this is what's relevant. That discernment, which only comes with experience.
There's a moment in every solopreneur's journey where they decide to stop being a freelancer and start being a CEO. That transition starts with strategy. It starts with having a clear, documented plan for who you serve, what you sell, and how you say it. It starts with having a professional business model. Most people never do this. I want to help you do it for free. I'm Bridget Bartlett, and when you click the link below, I'm going to give you a free account for my Vision Blueprint software. Its sole purpose is to help you create a stunning professional brand guide. It's a step-by-step wizard that helps you think through everything from your customer avatar and brand voice to your value ladder and calls to action. It's the foundational document that separates a hobby from a real business. And once you have that foundation, I want you to come and watch how to build on it. Your free account also gives you access to my private community where you can watch me coach my paid clients live 4 days a week. If you're ready to professionalize your business and build a real brand on a high level, this is your first step. Click the link to create your free brand guide now. I was just doing my live coaching session, and there was a real estate agent who was super frustrated, saying, I work for so long on this proposal and I deliver it, and I just can't believe that the client didn't sign up. And it's like, first of all, I explained it's a numbers game, but also
It
it's
is.
like, if it is a numbers game, then we need to revisit the amount of time it takes us to create these proposals. And I think that when you're looking at AI and that use case, it makes perfect sense. Like, if it
Absolutely.
normally takes us 4 hours to create a proposal, how fast can we now do this with AI? And then how many more people can we send proposals to? And then how is that going to dramatically increase our sales? I mean, that's what I think a lot of times people just think, oh, ChatGPT, and they kind of use it like a Google. Like, I'm just going to ask it a
Absolutely.
question. And they're not really thinking about, like, this is what I normally do. How can I use AI to make that faster and better?
Well, and the better part, the faster to me is the easy part. The better part is where this in a sales environment, I think it really excels because now imagine that as a salesperson, I can take every conversation that I've had with that prospect, every email conversation, every text conversation, every voice conversation, all that's available electronic data now, and I can feed that into my proposal system, and I can say, all right, you. Our proposals are all very similar, so we're going to be pretty similar in where we end up on here. But now I want you to go through all that communication and I want you to identify what did Bridget say were the key things that were going to matter to her. And I want to make sure that we're addressing those in the cover letter. And I want to make sure that when we're getting to the proposals, that when we talk between the good, better, and best options in our proposal, we address specific things that Bridget brought up as to why she should go from good to better or better to best. Now, I could have always done that, but that would have taken a memory that I don't possess and or a lot of time. Now, literally, it could go through all the conversations you've had over the last 6 months with a prospect or however long your selling cycle is in probably about 4 minutes. And it can then look at that proposal and go, okay, if we're selling to Bridget, here's how we make this proposal accurately really connect with what Bridget said her pain points were so we can demonstrate to her. Now you're winning. And to go back to your realtor's question, even if it's not better for him, his competition's going to start doing this or her competition's going to start doing it. And the customer's going to look at it and go, I have one proposal here that looks pretty generic. They're not going to care how many hours you put into it. And they're going to get another proposal that go, wow, not only has this got what I want, but it's telling me the things that I talked to Jonathan about and it's relevant. Wow, he listened. No, I actually didn't. I just used AI, but he listened and these are now tying it together. Who are they going to buy from? They're going to buy from the one that put all the dots and connected the dots for them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it does a lot to position you. It's like you're saying, they're gonna go with the one who's positioned as the expert. Who's the
Absolutely.
expert? The one with a beautiful, well-researched, well-thought-out proposal, or the one who has like black and white and it just has like cookie cutter information. Of course, because when the customer's looking at it, just based on appearance alone, they're deciding. They're like, this looks like a multi-million-dollar agency. So they probably have their processes in place. They probably know what they're doing, lots of
Bingo.
success stories. And then they see the other one that looks like a Google Doc and they're like, maybe a beginner. Do I really want to shell out like thousands of dollars for a beginner? It's literally because that's what we think,
Yeah.
So it's like that's what they think too.
No, absolutely. And it doesn't matter whether it's your proposal or even the testimonials. Most of us, when I had my agency, we had pages of testimonials. It was wonderful. But we got lazy like everybody else did. And we probably put the same 6 testimonials on 90% of the proposals that went out. Well, now imagine with AI, you can say, okay, I want you to look at everything that we've talked about with the prospect. And I want you to pick the testimonials that will appeal to them based on things they've struggled with. And you go, wow, they worked with they had the same problem I did, and they're working. Oh, and here's another one, and all of a sudden, again, it becomes so much more real and applicable as opposed to, well, Johnny said that we did a great job of delivering and met every commitment we'd ever made, versus Joe said that my revenue had just dropped by 30% the previous quarter, and I was frustrated and lost my marketing director, and I brought in this agency, and here's what they did, and here's the growth we had. One of those testimonials resonates. The other one seems like it's generic.
That's super smart. That is super smart. What do you teach the people in your program that you feel like you do differently than everybody else who's teaching AI?
I don't know if there's any one thing. If I had to say one thing, I still believe, and I will for a long time, that learning how to communicate with AI is incredibly important. A lot of people out there are going, it doesn't matter anymore. AI is really smart. It can understand what you want. And that's true. But the difference between a good response and an incredible response is knowing how to communicate with it. And one of the things I teach people to do, and it's the most simple thing in the world, whenever you're asking AI to do something for you, any type of prompt, whether it's writing a press release or strategizing with you, end your prompt, end your query with 6 words. Those 6 words are ask me any questions you have. That simple no that I hear virtually no one talking about, gives permission to the AI model to go, well, I know that in order to write a press release, I really need 7 key factors, and Jonathan only gave me 3. But you see, if we don't put that in, the AI models have been taught to fill in the blanks and assume. We know what happens when we assume we resemble the southbound end of a northbound mule. So we're not supposed to assume. But we do that all the time. But if you simply will add those 6 words, and maybe I forgot to give it enough context. Maybe I forgot to share something about my audience. The AI is smart enough, been trained well enough that it can come back and go, I only have 5 of the 7 things I need. I better ask the other 2 questions. And as a result, it gets better information, and the results it gives grow exponentially in quality.
That's really smart. I think I do that. I just never was really conscious of the fact that I do that until you just said that. That's really smart.
Well, then you're brilliant because, of course, we agree.
Of course, it must be right.
Exactly.
So, Jonathan, what are some of the things that you feel like people really struggle when it comes to, let's say, Bob the plumber?
Mhm.
Bob the plumber is like, I know all this AI stuff. I really just need more customers. Like, what do you think Bob the plumber should first do if he's like, okay, I'm open to the AI thing. I'm a little freaked out, but what should he first do? What do you think is like a way that he could maybe start implementing some of these processes to get quick wins?
Well, I think the first thing to do is understand that AI isn't going to go out and get him new clients. It's not how it works. I talk to all kinds of business people who are like, how do I use AI to go fill up my calendar? Well, AI is not going to fill up your calendar. How do I book more spots? It's not going to book more spots for you. But there are aspects of those processes that AI can help with. What I recommend to any business that's implementing, whether it's Bob the plumber or a Fortune 500 company, identify the repeatable tasks that you or your team are doing that when you talk about them, you kind of want to roll your eyes and go, yeah, I know I need to do that. Because we've all got those things that we do on a repeated basis, maybe daily, maybe weekly, maybe monthly, and we know we have to do them, but we don't really like doing them. Those are the perfect processes to start handing off to AI because AI doesn't get bored. It doesn't get sick of it. It doesn't decide it doesn't want to do that today. So I'll procrastinate and do it tomorrow. As long as you can give it a standard operating procedure that it can follow, it can do that. And it can do it once a day. It can do it once a minute. It can do it once a year, whatever you need. And you'll get quick wins within your organization because what will happen is not only will the job likely get done better, because again, there wasn't any frustration or boredom associated with it from the AI. If it's trained well, it'll also free up your employee so they don't have to deal with that anymore. And that makes your employee what? It makes them happy because they didn't want to deal with that job anyway. They never really liked doing that budget review and then putting the numbers in and just so that you had your dashboard. Well, let the AI go through all the numbers and create your dashboard for you. It'll probably be more accurate. And now your team member, even if they just sit back and have another cup of coffee, is having a better day at work than what they had before. And that means they're going to have a better attitude and they're going to be more productive overall.
What's one of the first things that you teach, like maybe a beginner who's just dipping into AI? What are some of the first things that you teach them, aside from
One of the
how to
first things,
communicate?
yeah, one of the first things I do is to do their best not to get caught in the bright shiny object syndrome. The marketing departments of AI companies are probably some of, I don't want to say the best or worst, depending on your perspective in the world, and that every AI tool that comes out is the answer to every problem we've ever had. And this AI tool is going to finally be what you wanted. Now, they're right in one thing. The AI tool we're using today is the worst AI tool we'll ever have because they're improving constantly. But as somebody getting started with AI, pick a model and stick with it. And don't worry whether your model does everything. Use your model to do 80% better than what you're doing right now. Find more time, find more freedom, find more flexibility, and find less stress. And then down the road, if you go, I don't really like the way this creates images, and I do create a couple images every week for things, then look at a different tool that'll help you do that better. But don't try to find either the one perfect tool because it doesn't exist, or find, I want 27 different tools because I have to have a specialty tool to do everything. start with ChatGPT, start with Gemini, start with Copilot. If you're a Microsoft shop, start with Copilot. If you're a Google shop, start with Gemini. If you're neither, start with ChatGPT. Any of those tools will let us do so much more than we could do without them, that whether or not we're operating at peak efficiency or using the latest and greatest tool really doesn't matter. And we'll spend more time chasing those tools than we will if we just take what we have and use it.
What is your favorite go-to model? Like when
Changes,
I know,
think,
it's
all
all
the
depends.
time,
What is it?
I think it changes all the time.
I know. I knew you were going to say that because
Yeah.
we all say, well, it depends on how we're using it. But we all have one. We have one that we have on our phones that we just click the button, and then it's like our go-to model. What is your go-to model for like all things AI? Well, most things.
If I could only have, as we record this in March of 2026, if I could only have one tool, and that's literally all I could have, I'd use Google Gemini.
Good. What do you like about Gemini that's better than?
It does a
That
lot
makes
of
it
things
acceptable.
well. And I happen to be a Google shop as far as we use G Suite for our stuff. So we're using Google Docs and Google Sheets and all that. And it works really well in those. And that saves me a tremendous amount of time. Can ChatGPT do certain things better? Yes. Can Claude do some things better? Yeah, especially copy. But when we say better, it's not the difference between bad and incredible. It's a difference between very good and good. And so it's not like we're talking about this we're universes apart. No, we're really close. Do I like Claude better for copywriting? Absolutely, and I use it for that. Do I like ChatGPT better for their custom GPTs than I do Gems? Generally, I do. But if I could only have one, I would use Gemini. And because Gemini lets me do everything I could want. I mean, I've got my text, I've got my images, I've got my video. They've now got music. I would cheat a little bit and go, they also give me Notebook LM, which is a Google product, which I love to use as well. So again, I have everything I need. They've got Google's AI Studio that if they don't have what I want, they're probably coming out with it soon. And, they don't have a great agent platform at the moment. The other platforms tend to do, at least try to have one. But they'll get caught up. It's a horse race. If they're not there today, the time we get around the next bend, I can't tell you who's going to be in the lead, but it won't be who's in the lead today. Everything changes every time we get to the bend in the race course. And those bends in the race course happen about every other day lately, it seems like.
How long
true.
have you been Gemini first, would you say? Is
It's
that
an interesting
something
question. So
fairly,
when
fairly
Google
recent, or I'm sorry, go ahead.
when Google came out, I thought Bard was an absolute disaster, and I was pretty vocal about that. I started becoming impressed with Gemini when they released 2.5, which I think was March or April of last year. And I'm like, hang on, this is actually a real model. I didn't really make it my daily use tool until probably last fall.
Does this sound familiar? You have the world's most powerful marketing tool, high level, but you're still not sure what to say. What's the right message for your customer? What should your emails sound like? What's the perfect call to action? This isn't a tools problem, it's a strategy problem. And you can't build a successful business on a shaky foundation. That's why I want to give you the tool to fix it for free. My name's Bridget Bartlett, and I want to give you a free account of my software, the Vision Blueprint. You can use it right now to create a professional, comprehensive brand guide for your business. This guide will walk you through defining your customer avatar, your brand voice, your value ladder, and your calls to action. It'll help you create a real professional business model. This is the strategic clarity you've been missing, and it's yours for free. Your free account also includes access to my private community, where you can watch me coach other high-level users live 4 days a week. You bring your own high-level account, and we'll show you what's possible. Stop guessing. Start building a real foundation. Click the link to get your free Vision Blueprint account now. I've recently switched from ChatGPT. I feel like I just hate ChatGPT, to be honest with you.
I feel the same way. I feel the same way some days.
I feel like it hallucinates more than the others. Maybe it's just me. I don't know. Marla,
my seat of the pants would agree with you. I don't have any empirical data, but I would agree with you. Yeah.
Yeah. She says, I think it's the way you train your ChatGPT. And it could be true, but
I think I think that that's very valid. Like, I get everything that generally speaking, that I need from ChatGPT.
Hmm.
However, what I will say is I'm noticing with the recent update that it is much more wordy, and it just goes on and on and on. Just at, it's way, the answers are way too long for me.
Yeah.
Um, so that's my biggest complaint. So I'm definitely starting to spend more time in Claude here recently.
Yeah, and I love Claude. I probably use Claude day to day more than I use Gemini, but the main reason is I write a lot of copy, and it's really good for that. And again, I've spent a lot of time training it to do that. But again, if we that proverbial, I'm not an AI, so I can't have every tool and expense it. Yeah, I'd probably stick with Gemini and be really happy with how much work I could get done with that in how effective that work could be.
What do you think of Manus? Have you used it?
Love it. I hate
You
how it
know,
gobbles up credits like a starving, elephant looking for peanuts. But literally the only complaint I have about Manus, I think, is the fact that there doesn't seem to be any direct correlation to my use and credits. It almost seems like I'm pulling the slot machine lever, and sometimes I'm like, wow, that was really reasonable, and other times I'm like, really, that cost me that many credits. So that's about my only complaint. I really like the flexibility of Manus, the things that I can do with it, its speed. I love its agent tool that I can talk to via Telegram over Apple CarPlay, so I can do legitimate hands-free AI while I'm driving, because it's just back and forth in CarPlay. But yeah, if I have one complaint, and I'm not a big fan of credit-based systems, I know they're needed and I get it, but there doesn't seem to be a correlation. I can't really budget my credits on a month-to-month basis. I kind of have to budget my usage on how many credits I've used, not budget my credits based on what I plan to do.
something I've just recently started doing with Manus, because it's my go-to. I feel like I spend about $2,000 a month in Manus credits, and I feel like it's worth every freaking penny. So I am just over the moon about it. But I have learned that if you start out your Manus prompt in a credit conscious way,
Ooh, I never
answer
thought of
this
that.
thing. And then it just gives you a much more simple response. Because, Manus, it's like you say, what is a bunny rabbit's favorite food? And it's going to be like using 1,000 tokens and generate like everything you could ever imagine about bunny rabbits and their food and their
Absolutely, yeah.
locations.
Encyclopedic answers, yeah.
Yeah, I love it. So, Jonathan, can you talk a little bit about like your history? How did you even get into agency? I know that you and your wife started an agency, but
Yeah.
can you talk a little bit about how you even got started doing any of this?
Sure. So early in life, I was actually selling IT services, and that company bought a web development company. And I just thought it was the coolest thing in the world to be able to do that. And I thought, websites are pretty cool. Now I'm going to date myself. This was, 26 years ago now. And in the process, the employer I was wouldn't let me go work for the web company. I wanted to go work for them, and they're like, no, we won't let you make that move. We need you on the other areas that I was working on. So I decided, it was time to leave, and I, through a series of events, ended up finally starting my own web design firm, and I loved it. And then life happened, and I decided to go work for a couple other people, because the first couple times I tried it, I didn't do particularly well, and so I worked for some other web developers. And after a series of events, my wife finally said to me one day, "Look, you're good at sales. Websites have gotten to the point nowadays with WordPress and Joomla at the time and other tools like that, that you didn't actually need to be a coder in order to build a decent website. Why don't you go try it on your own?" And those were the words I was waiting to hear. And I'm like, yes, dear, no problem. And I took off and did that. And then very quickly realized that I needed her operational expertise. I'm the visionary ADD entrepreneur. She's an operational genius. And so I was able to get her to leave the job she was at and come work with me to do that. So much so that she made one of my favorite comments. So I always tell people, she knew that if one of us needed to be in charge, if we were going to work together. And she came to me and said, "You realize only one of us can be in charge." And I'm like, "That's fine. I don't have any problem with that." She goes, "Great. You're selling me the company." I'm like, "Oh, I didn't see that coming." But I did. And, she was incredibly instrumental in growth. We had that agency for about 14 years. And then I left in 2023. She sold it in 2024. and yeah, then have both moved on to different areas. We're both doing AI related stuff, and I'm happy to say after that, when I left, and she's like, "It's so nice not working with you anymore," in a very nice, loving way. I'm happy to say she's back and she's leading Whitebeard Strategies and helping me do all the operational stuff that I'm not any good at either. And it's great because we've got a team of about 15 people, and she leads them, and I go out and do my thing and cause waves and have fun, and then they clean up and get everything done for me.
I think that's so cool to have. Like, my husband is not in marketing whatsoever. We did have a local business together, though. Now he's retired and traded his work truck in for a Tesla. So he's like, even though he doesn't understand anything that I'm doing, he's like my biggest cheerleader.
I
But
love that. That's good.
I have to say though, like, I do think that it would be very, very cool to be able to have those conversations about marketing. And that's why the rest of us love going to the summit, because it's the only time of
Yes.
the year we get to get to talk tech with other people who actually understand it. Can you talk a little bit about like where you met your wife, how long you've been together, and things like that?
Yeah, absolutely. So we met in the early days of Match.com, actually. So
Wow.
we met online. Yep. And I remember I was not a bar hopper at the time. I was working for an IT company, and I did quite a bit of travel. So Match.com was easy because I could communicate. And I thought, well, we've got to know each other a little bit. How about a phone call? And she's like, no, I don't have time for phone calls. Buy me dinner. And I did. And within a year, we were married. And that was 20, let me get it right here. That was 23 years ago. So yeah, it's been an amazing thing. And as they say, all it takes for a good man to become great is to find a great woman. And I'm blessed to say I
Mm.
did.
That's
That's
awesome.
awesome. So you were all in on the tech. You're like, I've got it in work. I'm going to go to match.com. You're like,
Yep.
Frank,
100%. I'm not an incredibly technical person. If my PC breaks, I'm lost. I don't know what to do. Well, now I have an 18-year-old, so he fixes it. But up until that time, I didn't know what to do. But I've always loved the technology, and I've always been an avid user of computers and all those computing devices. And so to me, it was perfect. Again, I didn't at the time I was traveling. I didn't want to go hang out at bars, and it just wasn't who I was. And so I'm like, well, how can I do this? And I was a sales and marketing guy, so I put on my sales and marketing hat. And my wife still laughs about this. Every Saturday night, I would get on and I would assume that, all right, so a bunch of women got on early in the week because they didn't have a date for Friday night. Hopefully they were going to get a date, so they'd get on Match.com. They met a bunch of creeps generally, and so Saturday night I would find anyone that I thought might be interesting. I'd just send them a simple form message, legitimately, that was, you've probably been hit up by a lot of different guys and probably had a lot of different things said. And if you haven't found Mr. Right yet, I forget what it said, but basically, I'd love to have a conversation. And got to admit, it worked really well. And I had tons and tons of email conversations and tons of phone conversations, and not as many dates, but it was nice because I didn't have to go on a ton of dates and go, well, that was a boring night. We got to get to know people really well. And then by the time you'd meet, it was like, wow, I feel like I know you because we've been talking for a few weeks or sometimes a few months before that happened. And at the time, I think it was a little different. I know my parents at the time, I was about 30, but my parents are like, I can't believe you're going to try to meet a girl online. And I'm like, why not? And so,
It
well,
was
back
so
in the
weird
day,
back then.
yeah, I mean, it was, everybody thought, oh, don't talk to people you don't know,
yeah,
don't never
yeah.
meet anyone online that you don't know. Which there was some validity to, making sure that we were safe, but
Well, I think
yeah.
especially as a woman, it's more important than it is, not to be sexist, but I mean, I'm 6'3" and 300 and some pounds. I mean, most people aren't going to give me a lot of grief. It's just a different position to be in. But I would explain to my mother, who was always nervous about it, Mom, I travel all around the United States meeting people for sales calls that I've never met before. In fact, normally before I meet them, I've never talked to them before because somebody else has set up the appointment. And you've never been once worried about me being, in trouble. And well, that's different. I said, oh, I probably is. But, you know, so anyway, one thing led to another, and happy to say 20, yeah, I got to add up 20, let's see, this is 25, 26 this year. So, yeah, so 23 years later, things are still great.
So what were you like growing up? Tell us, about the young
Oh
Jonathan that
boy.
brought you here.
Um, I grew up with a small business family. They were always into small business. My dad was always looking for the next get rich quick scheme. He never found it, but I watched him try that a lot. And I actually grew up. If when I was in school, I was that kid that always got teased. And so I actually, looking back on it, I had a pretty crummy childhood. Now, it wasn't terrible. I mean, I'm not saying, it was terrible, but I literally remember like in seventh grade begging my parents to remove me from the school I was at because the teasing was so terrible. But then something weird happened. I lived in a small town, and so when it came time for high school, we actually didn't have a high school, so I had to go to another community. We all went to another area for high school, and there were like 5 other small communities that fed that community for the high school. And the most amazing thing happened is none of that baggage that I had seemed to come with me because nobody knew me in the new school. I mean, the people that I went to school with, those 22 people did, but nobody else did. And it was that kind of changed my whole perspective at that point in time. And, I tried to follow the rules. I failed miserably on most of the time when I did that. And, I ended up divorced. I ended up spending 3 years in prison for making some bad choices. So I definitely embarrassed most of my family along the way, but I learned a lot in the process. So the good news is it helped me become who I am today. Would I want to go through those things again? No. But as I look back, it was a good plan, and it worked for me to help me be who I am today. I couldn't be who I am today if I hadn't made some of those stupid decisions and learned from them.
So we got to talk about the prison because
Anything, yeah. I like to
never
call it my
knew
federally mandated sabbatical.
that. I never knew that about
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, I didn't
Yeah,
either.
well, I don't wear it like a neon sign, but it
Well,
comes up in conversation pretty regularly, so I don't hide from it.
yeah,
I
you
was working
shouldn't.
for an IT company, and I was an officer, and I knew something shady was going on. Well, I thought something shady was going on, but I didn't actually know about it, and so I made the decision, which was the wrong decision. Just don't look, don't ask any questions, don't worry about it. That worked out great until about a year after I resigned. When I met my wife, I worked there, and she's like, "You need to leave. There's stuff going on there." And I'm like, "But I don't know." And she goes, "No, you don't know the specifics, but there's something going on." So I left the company. About a year later, they got raided by the FBI. And because I'd been an officer, I quickly learned that in federal court, there's something they call conspiracy. And that basically meant I should have known better. And the fact that I didn't know better isn't an excuse. And so I was charged on a series of conspiracy charges, from bank fraud to money laundering and all that. Now, it doesn't clarify, I didn't mean I did them, but I should have known. And total clarity, I did tell a few lies along the way that I shouldn't have told, that got me in trouble. And I had to spend 3 years in a federal prison camp as a result of that. But it was a significant part of my journey to who I am today. And I give my wife a ton of credit because we'd been married about 4 years when that all happened. And she stuck with me, which was not the norm. About 75%, as I understand it, people that get incarcerated end up losing their marriages. I didn't. So I was really blessed to get through that. And yeah, I just decided at that point, okay, I had been playing kind of loose with the truth and not worried, and had always kind of bought into, if I'm not doing something wrong, I don't have to worry about it. And yes, I did tell a couple lies, but I didn't think those lies were going to hurt anybody. So again, it was kind of, have you ever met anybody, by the way, that, it's like, well, it's okay to lie in your taxes because it's the government. That's kind of the way I grew up. It was, you can lie to insurance companies and the government because it doesn't matter. It does matter. And that's basically how I got in trouble. So I spent 3 years in prison, and I came out and decided, one, I didn't ever want to go back. And two, that I now had one major problem I had to deal with. And that's that people had a reason to question my integrity. So I'd better make sure I gave them a really good reason to never, if they got to know me, to never question my integrity. And it just meant I started walking a very different life when I got out. And like I said, I'm blessed to say that it's all worked out in the long run. So it's all meant for a purpose.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that because I know
Yeah.
that it's especially just being public and sharing things. Sometimes it's really hard to go into that, because then you're kind of afraid to be judged. But also, I feel like it is a testimony of your character and integrity to be open about it and discuss it and say, yes, I absolutely went to, I mean, I've never admitted this either, but I went to jail. I was
Hmm.
drinking before I was 21 and I totally went to jail. Things happen in our lives. And it doesn't mean that you're just a bad person. I actually think it's incredibly intriguing to learn that about you, because I
Well,
know
thank
I have
you.
family who's been in prison as well, and I know that that changes you a lot. The things that
Yeah.
you witness, the things that you experience, and all
Oh
of that.
yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about, like, just, I know you talked about your
Anything. Yeah.
perspective and things, um, but like, what did you experience there that was just really eye opening to you?
Couple things for me. One was that I had grown up incredibly sheltered. I didn't understand the way a lot of things worked in life because you meet just different people in prison. And I was in a camp. I mean, they didn't even have fences where I was at, so there was a sidewalk, and they're like, "Don't go on that side of the grass, or you're in trouble." And I'm like, and then nobody did. There were 1,300 of us. Nobody did. So I definitely learned that I lived really sheltered. Growing up, I also, for me, it really strengthened my faith. I'm a Christian, and walking in, I was a Christian, but it strengthened my faith. And one of the things that happened to me was just divine planning. And that's it. I'd been in sales my whole life. And everybody's like, okay, you're going to be gone for 3 years. I had some family that had been through military, and they're like, you can handle the 3 years. You guys will make it as a couple, but you need to do something. What are you going to do for 3 years? Because there's not a lot to do in prison. And I said, well, I know a lot about sales. I've been in sales my whole life. I want to learn about marketing. And I never had learned about marketing really, and I never had that opportunity. And literally the second day I was there, somebody came up to me and said, what do you want to do while you're here? They asked me that same question. And I said, well, I'm here for 3 years. I want to learn marketing. And I remember the gentleman stopped and he looked at me kind of quizzically and he goes, really? And I go, yeah, it's what I want to do. He goes, follow me. And I'm like, great. I don't know this dude. And he wants me to follow him. Where are we going? Now, mind you, these are like college dormitories where we lived. So it wasn't like there were individual cells per se, there were individual bunks. And he walks me into another wing and he introduces me to a guy who at the time was in his 60s. And he says, do you know Roger? And I'm like, I'm looking at this guy going, I have no idea who this is. He goes, oh, this guy is Roger Blackwell. And I'm like, okay, am I supposed to know who this is? I don't know who this is. Well, ends up Roger Blackwell was the dean of Ohio State University in the marketing department and was there on insider trading. And Roger so happened to be there for a year longer than I was going to be there. And he asked me, he says, the gentleman, Terry, that introduced us said, Jonathan wants to learn marketing. And Roger said, really? And then I said, yeah. And I kind of explained what my goal was. And he goes, well, would you like a tutor? I'm like, yeah, but where am I going to find? I didn't know who he was at this. And where am I going to find a tutor? I'm in prison. And he goes, well, I was the dean of marketing at Ohio State University for 7 years. He goes, if you want to learn, I'll be happy to teach you. And I literally had a personal tutor in marketing for 3 years. Now, I don't have a master's degree or anything else because obviously I didn't get a degree, but I got tutored by who I consider to be certainly one very incredibly wise man in that area, and literally was able to go sit down with him and talk to him whenever I wanted and get that guidance. And he taught me a lot of the marketing principles that I still use today, those core marketing principles that apply regardless of what the technology is and everything else. It's still about understanding people and why people make decisions. And again, I just give total credit there. The fact that that's to me was a total God thing that would have never happened. And so that prison allowed me to learn a lot about marketing. It allowed me to had a lot of time to think and read. So I certainly spent a lot of time and deepened my faith as a result of that. And one of the things, I was just on a podcast earlier today talking about it, and he said, you share your faith pretty openly when it comes up. And I said, yeah, I don't lead with it, but I'm very open about it. He goes, why? And I said, well, he didn't know either. I said, I'm a felon. And I said, I figure once I got comfortable with saying I was a felon, that was a whole lot more embarrassing than saying I was a Christian. So I suppose I might as well talk about both of them then. And that's just, again, really what it's boiled down for me. If I can be comfortable and say, yeah, I screwed up and I'm a felon, then I hope I can be comfortable enough to go, you know what, I'm a man of faith. I love God. And I hope one day I hear, well done, good and faithful servant. Because if I have, for me, then my life was good. Whatever led that to happen was good.
Amen. What if you could be a fly on the wall 4 days a week as a six-figure agency owner coaches other high-level users live? What if you could see the real-world strategies, the live troubleshooting, and the aha moments as they happen? No theory, no fluff, just real coaching with real business owners working on real problems. That's exactly what I want to invite you to do. My name's Bridget Bartlett, and I want to give you free access to watch my live coaching sessions inside my private community. 4 days a week, you can look over my shoulder as I help entrepreneurs just like you build and scale their businesses on high level. And to make sure you can apply what you learn, I'm also giving you a free account for my Vision Blueprint software. You can use it to create a professional brand guide for your business, the same foundational document that my paying clients use. It'll help you map out your value ladder, define your brand voice, and finally get clear on your business model. This is your chance to get the strategy and watch the implementation for free. Now, click the link below to get your free Vision Blueprint account and your front row seat to live coaching. All you need is your own high-level account to put it all in practice. And I can totally see, like, God promises to turn our bad into something good, and it's like you did the bad thing, you had to
I
be
did.
punished, but He's like, I'm not done with you. I got plans. I love
Yeah,
that.
I tell you, there's for those who are listening that don't know, but there's a verse that talks about consider these trials pure joy because God's turning you into the person He needs you to be. And I'm paraphrasing, but that was that a hard verse to listen to when I was going in because, of course, everybody's sharing that with me that, hey, Jonathan, you're gonna, and I'm like, yeah, I really don't want to hear that right now, but that and then Philippians 4, 6, and 7 taught me something, and my aunt shared this with me, and it was a great verse. It was in everything through prayer and thanksgiving, bring your supplications to God, and He will surround you with His peace. And the part I'd heard the verse, I grew up in Christian school and all that, but I'd never heard two words in there, and it's in everything with thanksgiving. And I'd missed those two words. And I realized how incredibly powerful that change of mindset was that I had to sit while I'm in prison. My wife, by the way, was 5 months pregnant when she dropped me off. I had a self-surrender, so she literally dropped me off. She's 5 months pregnant. She had our son, who's now 18, when I was in prison, that I had to give thanks while I'm 10 hours away and can't see my wife. I can't see my new baby. That was hard.
I'm
But
sure.
when I thought about it and thought, hang on, if I twist that and not in a bad way, in a good way, and I go, okay, it's actually pretty cool. My life sucks right now because I'm in prison, but my wife hasn't left me. I've got a healthy baby boy. Things are going just okay. I've got plenty of food to eat. I've got a roof over my head. My wife's got a great job, so she's okay, and the baby's okay. I have a lot to be thankful for, even though my personal situation absolutely just stinks right now. And I think, above anything else, I learned that mindset shift. I had to accept and I had to choose, not really accept, I had to choose to be thankful in what I was doing, to look at what was positive about it. And I learned that when you do that, life gets a whole lot better.
What was that day when you left? What was it like? The
Mm.
day that you got out?
The day I got out, oh, joyous beyond belief because it was like finally. But it was almost like I felt very similar in many ways to the way I did when I was 18 years old and I left to go to college. It was like I'm starting all over. I'm starting fresh because I knew it was an entirely different experience. And I knew I had an option. I could either fall back into my habits and become the Jonathan that I had been, or I could say that's now behind me. The lies I told, the looseness with the truth that I played, the willingness, as long as I'm not hurting anybody, it doesn't matter. All of that had to go to the wayside, and I had to draw a new line for myself. And that wasn't always easy. I mean, it's hard. I was 41 years old when I got released. That's not always easy at that point in time to go, oh, yeah, that was easy to do. No, that wasn't necessarily easy to do. But um, again, I'm going to go back to that verse in Philippians. When I looked at everything through that filter of thanksgiving, it changed everything and made everything very tolerable. So I don't know if that's a good answer, but it definitely just changed who I was. And I decided that, we heard all about people that were going to go back due to recidivism and all that. And I just decided that wasn't going to be me. I wasn't going to make the same mistakes again. And I was going to do everything I could to be who I wanted to be. And that at that point was to be more Christ-like.
Was there a moment that you had to make that shift? Because I'm sure that when you're in court and they're like, guilty, here's your sentence, that you were not immediately like, the Bible says I should be thankful, so I'm thankful now. I'm sure
I
there
was
was a transition before.
in my case, it was even a bit harder because when I met my wife, which was about the same time my activities were taking place that got me in trouble, we decided that we'd screwed up our relationships enough in life that we needed to actually go back to church if we were going to make this relationship work. And so we did, and we recommitted our lives. We got baptized as adults. And then I got in trouble. And that was probably my biggest struggle. It's like, hang on, I just recommitted my life and got baptized, and now I'm getting in trouble for something I did. I don't understand. But I understand because I didn't have a very good perspective on what was happening in life. I had made some decisions, but my life hadn't changed. It wasn't like I know, not to get religious, but I'd been forgiven. It was all over at that point in time, but Jonathan, hadn't changed who I was. And I needed to walk through a valley to change who I was. And that valley for me happened to be 3 years in prison, or as I like to say, my federally mandated sabbatical.
The Bible talks about they'll be won over by your testimony. And I think it's just so important for us to share our testimonies. And we can relate this to marketing so easily because nobody wants to learn from someone who's had no experience and no trials and all of that. We want to learn from people who have had the experiences, who have that trail, the story to tell. I once was this and now I'm this. And I think it's the same if you're marketing for Jesus. It's like, I once was this and now I'm this. And that's really what turns the tide in people's minds about anything, Jesus or a great restaurant.
No, it's true. That's very true.
So what are some plans for the future, Jonathan?
Well, my hope is that I can continue to influence others positively about the positive parts of AI. I have people in my community that think AI is evil, and I have people that think it's amazing, and I have people think it's going to do dishes for them tonight. It won't do that latter. But we run into all of that. And my real goal, I'm 56, turning 57 next month. My goal is I want to reach, and it's an arbitrary goal, but I want to reach 10 million people that currently think AI is not something that's a great thing, or they're scared about it, and teach them how it really is going to be an amazing tool if they simply make that choice to embrace it and to use it in a way that amplifies their skill and experience. So my hope, Lord willing, I have plenty of time to do that, and I can continue doing what I do now. I am blessed beyond measure to do stuff that I love. I get to hang out on Zoom meetings and travel around the world talking to people about AI, and generally get paid to do it. And that's a pretty sweet gig. I'm just, like I said, I'm just super blessed to be in that role, and hope I can continue to add value. One of my goals is I want to add value to my audience. I want the audience at the end of the day that I work with, whoever's in that community, to feel that they took 10 times more than they gave. And if I can do that and be positive about AI in the process, then I think we're doing good.
How do you think, because I hear this a lot, agency owners with high levels, as soon as they start talking about AI with their clients, everybody's like anti-AI, or people run ads, like agency owners run ads and say, check out this AI, whatever it is. And the comments are just filled with, I hate AI. AI is the devil. How do you respond to people who say things like that?
I don't. If they're convinced that that's the situation, my words are not going to change them.
So
One of the
true.
things one of the lessons that Facebook taught me, and it's an interesting way to do it, is that regardless of the opinions that I espouse and the logic that I think backs up those opinions and the facts that think I back up those opinions, I have never convinced somebody otherwise on Facebook just because I posted about it. Didn't matter how good or how logical I thought I was. And so um, if people are dead set on not liking AI, I'm like, cool, no problem. I'm not here. And people are like, well, you're not going to try to convince me. I'm like, no, I'm not. It's your choice. And what's interesting in that process is not all, but a lot of those people, Bridget, then actually end up, they do have questions, but they just have I find they have their guard up so high. And the moment I'm like, okay, cool. Then they're like, well, could I ask you a couple of questions? Because I wear hats like this that have AI on them and shirts that have AI in them and stuff like that. So it's not real hard to figure out that I'm pretty much, a proponent of AI. But not all, but a lot of those people will then come back and, like I said, and they'll have questions. And it ends up most of them don't like AI, not because they've had a bad experience, but because they're fearful of it. They simply don't know what they don't know, and there's a fear. And I get that. I'm fearful of some things too, but I totally understand that, and I get where they're coming from. And yeah, I mean, if somebody's selected that if they've decided, I guess, that AI is bad, okay, no problem.
How would you, how, I'm sure that you've thought of this because I certainly have. How would you AI proof your business? Like, how would you plan if you aren't already? How are you planning for the future where AI is just doing everything that we're doing now? I think about this as a coach, like, man, I'm constantly, I have a problem. I go to Manus and I figure it out. Like, how are we as coaches going to be helping people in the future? What do you think that role is going to look like?
I think it's a really good question. And it's something that comes up a lot. I get approached with it a lot about, Jonathan, you realize everything you teach, AI can teach you. And I'm like, well, yeah, where do you think I learned it from? Of course I know that. But, we've been paying coaches for millennia, or certainly for centuries, to help us do different things because coaches were better at it. None of that information was typically only available to that coach as some special dispensation that only they knew. It was either experience and or they chose to study something different, or a combination, generally a combination of experience and study, that meant that that coach had more experience than we did. And if I wanted to shorten the distance between where I am and where that coach is, the best thing I could probably do was have them teach me what they've learned. I don't think that's going to change with AI either. If somebody wants to learn about Claude Code tonight, they can go ahead and look it up and find lots of explanations about it. And that may or may not give them the answer. But the ultimate answer, I guess, is personal brand, because the people that work with me because they like the way I teach things. They like the fact that I try to make complex stuff really simple. I'm not a theoretician. I can't say that right. I don't know. I'm not into theory. I'm into practical, applicable ways to use AI. And my audience, I know my audience well. They're entrepreneurs. A lot of them are agency owners. They're not interested in what AI might do for us in 6 months. They want to know what can we do today to save time, to make money, and to deliver more value? What can I do today to make it better without spending too much money on it? Depending on perspective, what is too much money? And that's a big discussion I have with people. Probably like you, Bridget. I tell people how much I spend on AI in a month, and they go, "You what?" I'm like, "Well, yeah, but do you know how much work I can get done because of it? It's probably one of the best investments I make." But they're still stuck on, should I pay $20 a month for ChatGPT? Yes, you should. Probably more. And so I think that's a big part of it.
I think that might be the smartest answer I've ever heard to that question. Because when you were saying that, I was like, man, that's so right. Because everything I know, I learned from YouTube
Mhm.
and practical application. But
Absolutely.
I learned from YouTube. And I think back to when I was learning all that stuff. All those same videos and everything that I watched is still available on YouTube. But I decided to take it and run with it, and other people don't. And so that
Yeah.
does make a lot of sense that it's like it's available now. That's really smart. It's a good answer.
Mhm.
Well, I think we all have that. I mean, I have to get the oil changed. I'm a big motorcyclist. I love riding motorcycles, and I've got to get the oil changed. I'm perfectly competent enough to change the oil on my motorcycle. I'm bringing it to a mechanic to pay them to do it. Not because I can't do it, or not because I can't watch 27 different YouTube videos showing me exactly how to do it. I don't want to do it. I'd rather do something I find fun, and I don't find that fun. So I'll pay somebody else to do it. And I think, as business owners, as agency owners, we need to understand that our client mix may change over the years. And we certainly need to stay up on the technology. But as long as we're providing a service and a value that the business owners we serve don't want to do, they're still going to be willing to pay us to do those things.
I agree 100%. Even vibe coding a website. Business
Yeah.
owners don't want
They don't want to do that.
Yeah.
No.
So true.
Yeah.
So true.
They don't want to do that.
Yeah. Well, Jonathan, thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on. I got to ask one question first, if I can.
Yeah.
Marla, your background is not faded. What do I want to say? Blurred, so I can't see the whole thing.
Yep.
But do I see a verse from Philippians behind you?
4:13. You bet.
Ah, very cool.
Absolutely.
I couldn't tell what it was. I'm like, I think that says Philippians, but it was just blurry enough I couldn't tell. Thank you for telling me that.
Yeah, no, thank you for asking. I get a lot of comments on it. Since I got the new camera, though, you're right, it does blur the background. And so maybe I need to figure out a way to do I need a new lens? Maybe that's what I need.
No, the newer ones, they just do that. It's how they work, I guess. So,
Yeah.
Well, very cool. Ladies, thanks so much for having me, and thanks for just having a conversation. This was an incredible time. Thank you.
Thank you for coming. And you're definitely in the right place talking about your faith. Marla and I are both very loud Christians. So we love us some
that.
Jesus, and always happy to talk about Jesus with you anytime.
Well, anytime you want a Jesus freak on, just let me know. I'm happy to show up.
For sure. We'll do it. All right. Thank you so much, Jonathan. And thank you, Ms. Marla, of course, for joining us today for this episode of the Leverage and Lead podcast. And we'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye.
If you enjoyed this conversation, make sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode, and join the Leverage and Lead private community for live coaching 4 days a week at leverageandlead.com. We'll see you inside.